The Heat continue their pursuit of Damian Lillard, and Tyler Herro's name has been consistently mentioned as part of any deal for the Blazers. But can the Heat keep Tyler out of a trade? And is there a chance that Lillard might rescind his request for a trade? We debate that and more in today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. I'm Wes Goldberg. Joining me as always, it's David Ramil. However you're tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app, thanks so much for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Still a stalemate in Damian Lillard talks. The Blazers don't want Tyler Herro. They're waiting for Miami to make a better offer, and the Heat are not budging. But since the Blazers don't want Tyler Herro, could the Heat make a cleaner offer that doesn't even include him or involve a third team that they would have to trade him to? It would obviously still involve up to 3 first-round picks the Heat can trade, as long as they unlock protections on that OKC pick. 3 pick swaps. And then, David, I would imagine Kyle Lowry plus Duncan Robinson plus Nikola Jovic plus Jaime Jaquez Jr., who Sam Vecini actually reported recently from The Athletic that Portland was interested in the pre-draft process. So all of those things, it's a lot of things. It's both Lowry and Duncan. It's both of the young guys in Jovic and Jaquez. It's all the picks that we were talking about before. What do you think of that deal from Miami's side?
It's really tough to say. I think they'd have to pull the trigger, though, because they'd just be so clearly the favorites in the East, if not in the league, for a title. If you can amass that level of talent, there might be problems with the fit. We'll talk about that later on the show. But in terms of just overall starting talent and what you might be able to supplement in terms of other players that you can bring in free agency to the players that are already on this roster, it's as good a group as Miami has ever had throughout their franchise history. I think it's a strong contender, perhaps the strongest. I mean, again, it was top heavy during the Big Three era, but this is, I mean, you're looking at Jimmy Butler, a potential Hall of Famer. I think pretty likely a Hall of Famer. Dame Lillard, absolutely one of the Hall of Famer, top 75 player. Tyler Herro, great scorer for all the trash that he's been given over the last couple of weeks, ever since his name was included in the trade. Still a very good scorer. Bam. And I don't even care who the 5th starter is. You could put me or you in there, and there's a good chance that we'd still be able to lock down a title for Miami. So I just think, if you can keep Tyler, you absolutely have to do it.
I love the idea. I like you said, we'll get into the fit later on. But if you can keep a guy as valuable as Tyler Herro, solely because Portland just doesn't want him, because and look, I get it. I understand why. If he was 6'8", they would want him. Sure. He just doesn't play the position that they need. They have too many guards. I get it. All right. I'm not blaming I'm not saying Portland's ridiculous for not wanting Tyler Herro. They are a little ridiculous for not engaging the Heat and trying to figure out a third team. That just makes the trade better for them. But that's a show that we've done a billion times already. If you could keep Tyler Herro, fit be damned, and how valuable he is, considering that his value has kind of been dragged down by the market because of the way he's been talked about recently, then I would say just keep him. Then just keep him if you can. Does it hurt to lose a guy like Jovic and Jaquez? Of course. The Jovic potential is tantalizing. Everything we've seen from Jaquez, though his summer league was cut short with a shoulder injury, everything we saw was very encouraging, and he's exactly the kind of player that the Heat need in terms of additional wing length and versatility. But they're not proven the way that Tyler Herro is. So you just keep Tyler Herro if you can keep him. Now, from Portland's perspective, I'm interested if this was a better deal for them. I guess you could argue that it would be. I guess the first thing I think Portland fans would say is, well, no, we want Jovic and Jaquez, and we want you to still find that third team to send Tyler Herro to so that you could send us another couple of draft picks. We would prefer all of that stuff, right? With and I guess the Heat's argument would be, well, make us. You know what I mean? Like it would be like, find the other offer that makes us go up this high. And I think if the Heat were to re-engage with Portland and say, hey, you could take Kyle Lowry's expiring contract, which you could either come off your books or flip it for something valuable at the trade deadline. You could, or, just have a nice veteran point guard on your roster to mentor the young guards on your roster in a way that Tyler Herro can't mentor young guards, right? He's a young guard himself. Duncan Robinson, who makes more sense for them in terms of positionality and length. I guess like you could play him as sort of like a small ball 3, kind of, if you really wanted to. He is at least 6'7". You could play him at that position. And then obviously Jovic and Jaquez, who are definitely the positions that Portland is looking for. And you're getting both of them. Plus, if you're able to lift the protections on that OKC pick, hey, here's 3 first-round picks. Here's 3 pick swaps. That is a lot of stuff. That's a lot of stuff. And I think Jovic and Jaquez, depending on Portland's evaluation of them, those are 2 good young players. I won't go so far as to say, like, I've seen like Barry Jackson with the Herald say, like, well, that's basically like if you do the swaps plus the picks, that's 6 picks plus these 2. That's like 8 first-round picks. I won't go that far, but it's a good haul. It's a good haul, I think.
Well, I mean, the pick swaps are somewhat overvalued, right? Like Miami's probably going to be better. Yeah. So I mean, over the next few,
they're literally they're only there for the press release to be like, well, we got the pick swaps too. That's just like saving face from the front office. And Miami's like, have the pick swaps. You can have all of our second round pick swaps too if you want them. You can have all the swaps.
My only concern, or not necessarily concern either, is just that we haven't got any kind of clarification from Portland because they've been so tight-lipped and so, at least publicly, difficult in terms of their dealings with not just Miami but any other team. We don't even know what they want in exchange. Like, we haven't even gotten the standard. We want picks. We want young players. We want proven veterans. We don't know what they want.
Early on in the process, you're right, but early on in the process, it was vague. It was like, hey, we want an all-star haul. And then it was later reported it was like young all-star caliber players and picks.
Bradley Beal's an all-star, and he was worth Landry Shamet and like a second-round pick. So it's
I guess. I mean, that's a separate. I mean, he had the no-trade clause. It's different. But to your point, though, like they're going to get more than what Washington got for Beal, but they're not getting the Rudy Gobert, Kevin Durant package. They're not getting that, you know? So
those are extremes.
Those are, both sides of the extreme spectrum. So, but to your, I don't know. It would be nice to know if Portland wanted this. I would imagine that if they did want this, that Miami would know. I understand, like, the Trailblazers know that Damian Lillard is more than likely leaving. And I've made the argument that I think that they want to trade him. Despite what they've said publicly, I think they actually want to trade him based on their actions over the last basically 2 seasons. If they thought that this was a good deal, this would probably be done already. I feel like, I feel like there's 2 things going on. They don't really want anything that Miami wants, and they're being very stubborn and kind of petty about the fact that Damian Lillard only listed Miami on his list of preferred destinations. That he said it's Miami, period. I think that's really what's going on here.
I think that pettiness certainly exists. I wonder, however, if, like, as we've said before,
but I don't think that would get in the way of what they viewed as a very good deal. I just want to be clear on that. And if they viewed this as a very good deal, I think they would have just already made it. They have the trade machine just like we do,
Could Caleb be the sticking point then in this again? Like, is that the thing? Is these pick swaps, these combination of players, along with the picks and pick swaps, and is it just Caleb Martin? I mean,
I can't imagine that Caleb has any value for Portland. You're gonna have to pay him in a year. He's 27 years old. Like, what good does it? If I'm Portland, I would rather have Jaquez and Jovic. And I guess you could be like, well, we want all of it. Like, give us Caleb also. But it's like,
right. That's what I'm saying. It's like,
but I can't.
And that's a concern, though.
That would be it. But I don't think that would be it. I have a hard time thinking that if Portland liked this enough and all they need, like, why would they want Caleb that bad? That doesn't make sense to me. He doesn't make sense for them. He
can't be the star level player, right? But he can be really good complementary. Let's project ahead to next year, beyond next season. Like, when he becomes a free agent again, what is his market like? Something similar to what Max Strus got? And would they be willing to pay him in order just to continue to? You don't think so?
Well, they just paid Jeremy Grant all that money. They could trade him, obviously, but
he's a 4, right? Like, different positions. So I mean, Caleb,
but he'll be 28. It's like he doesn't fit. Like, he'll be 20. Like, we think of Caleb Martin as like this young guy. He's been in the league for a while. He just recently sort of blossomed, but he'll be 28 when you got to pay him. What are you going to give him? Like, you're going to pay him in $20 million a year, $16 million a year, whatever it's going to be, until he's 32 years old. Jeremy Grant's old too, but they thought that maybe they were trying to convince Damian to stay. I think they're probably maybe a little bit of buyer's remorse in the Jeremy Grant thing now. They're going to trade Jeremy Grant at some point over the next couple of years. I don't know. I think it's a worthwhile question to be asked. But if they liked this as a base level package, I don't think that the sticking point for them would be Caleb Martin because, again, he doesn't make sense for their timeline. I think they would rather have the young things and all the picks. Right. But who knows? In terms of the Heat, we already said that we would do this deal if we were the Heat, if it means that obviously you're able to keep Tyler Herro. There are questions about how Tyler Herro and Damian Lillard would fit. I think they're worthwhile questions. We're going to answer them after this. But first, a word from our sponsor.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Take your first swing at betting on Major League Baseball over at FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 and you'll get $200 in bonus bets whether you win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting on everything from the money line to the over-under to who you think is going to hit the first home run, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. Everybody loves that. There's no better place to bet on Major League Baseball than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So if you go and sign up today, make sure to visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, the official partner of Major League Baseball.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Make sure that you're subscribed on YouTube. Subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Like the videos if you're on YouTube. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. Could Damian Lillard and Tyler Herro fit? What would that fit look like? David, you said something interesting I want to kind of go back to. That it would be the most loaded roster the Heat have had in franchise history.
Yeah.
Go in on that a little bit more.
I think you looked at the Big Three era, right? And I think that's pretty clearly the most talented roster Miami's ever had. I know talent is hard to quantify, and I've made that point myself. But even going back to 2006, that was basically Dwayne, an older version of Shaq, a less effective one, and then a cast of players that was able to contribute at any point in time. 2006 doesn't happen if Dwayne Wade doesn't become the best player in NBA Finals history, you know? Aside from all that, Miami has not been able to maintain that consistent level of talent. During the Big Three era, it was the Big Three, and as good as Ray Allen was, I still think that Tyler Herro at this point in his career is better than that version of Ray Allen that Miami had for 2 seasons in Miami. Yeah. And I think, again, there's still enough surrounding those 4 players. And again, I don't even know who the 5th starter would be. Maybe it's Caleb. Maybe it's
Kevin Love.
Highsmith. Maybe it's Kevin Love. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And everybody will find a way to contribute. There are concerns, though, to the overall question about this segment. There are potential problems in that Lillard.
Can I stop you there? Because I put the depth chart together, and then we can I think that's a good way to start and then get into the fit concerns and things like that. So, there was this ESPN graphic. I'm not even sure if it was a real ESPN account or like a fake. I just sort of saw it, screenshotted.
Right.
Saying that like Damian Lillard and Tyler Herro would start in the backcourt. I do not think that would be the case. I don't think that they would start together.
Tyler off the bench again, huh?
Correct. I think it would be I think the starting 5 would be Damian Lillard, Josh Richardson, Jimmy Butler, Kevin Love, and Bam Adebayo. I think that's your starting lineup. With the potential for maybe Caleb Martin or Haywood Highsmith or somebody like that to maybe beat out Kevin Love in training camp for the power forward. But it would be Kevin Love's job to lose, I think. That's your starting 5. That gives you Tyler Herro as your 6th man off the bench. Caleb Martin off the bench, filling in all the gaps the way that he does. And then either Thomas Bryant or Orlando Robinson, whoever wins that open backup center battle in camp. One of those guys coming off the bench for Bam's backup. That's I think your top 8 with a Haywood Highsmith sprinkled in here.
Unless Christian Wood is still an option too.
Okay, yeah. Unless they sign Christian Wood and then throw Christian Wood into the starting power forward spot, and then Kevin Love comes off the bench, etc. But in terms of just this is what I think your kind of top 8 would be. And I like the idea a lot of bringing Tyler Herro off the bench. It solves all your problems in terms of, well, who's Miami's backup point guard? Who replaces Gabe Vincent and Kyle Lowry if all these guys are leaving in the offseason? Tyler Herro's your backup point guard. He's your backup shooting guard. He's your 6th man. He could just run the offense, and you could stagger him and Damian Lillard. And I think the guy you need next to Dame in the backcourt is a guy who is long and versatile and can space the floor. And that's Josh Richardson. He could just defend opposing point guards. Yeah, 3-and-D kind of guy. That, to me, is the way it would shape up.
I just don't think you could get Tyler to buy in again. Like, again, dangling his name for an all-time great notwithstanding, like, we know that he's probably not exactly happy with how everything has been playing out over the last few months. He's missed the playoffs, he missed the finals. They still made it all the way despite him. And I think that there is a level of broken trust. Now, if you keep him, can you sell him on the idea of coming off the bench? I just don't think I think he would put in his own trade requests, and they might say, well, go ahead. We don't care. You can request whatever trade you want. But I don't think that they can get him to be productive and stay happy and not be, a potentially divisive problem in the locker room, because he's going to complain for more minutes. He's going to be like, oh, you got Josh Richardson over me. It could be very problematic.
Maybe I'm naive. I just don't see Tyler. Tyler made it clear when he won Sixth Man of the Year that he wanted to start without being without being like a problem in the locker room. And I think he could still do that. He could always I view myself as a starter. I'm a starter, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to be off the bench my entire career. He could keep saying all of those things. We'll see. On the other, I hear everything you're saying, and it's something that I think the coaching staff would have to consider. But at the same time, you can also be like, well, we already burnt this bridge, and we're not going to rebuild it by just putting him in the starting lineup next to Damian Lillard. You know what I mean? Like, it's sort of like, yeah, that ship has sailed. So just come off the bench or don't. If you hold out, you hold out. I just can't see Tyler Herro doing that. But I think it's worth exploring. I think it's worth exploring. Yeah. Like, if it's Dame and Tyler Herro, then you can't start Kevin Love, because that's 3 minus defenders. You can't do it. And you can't even go out and sign Christian Wood and make him, because Christian Wood is a minus defender. So who's your power forward / other forward next to Jimmy Butler? It would have to be probably Caleb Martin. And we've already been down this road, and the Heat don't prefer that position lineup. So if it's Dame, Tyler, Jimmy Butler, let's call it Caleb Martin and Bam Adebayo. I mean, how good is that? It makes me nervous having Dame and Tyler. I guess
that's
you could
playoff only lineup. That's like you bust that out at some point in a 7-game series when you want to go small, and that lineup would have that lineup would have a ridiculous net rating, I'm sure. But I just don't know that you can go to that well way too often. You probably need to consider Haywood Highsmith, and that's just under the assumption that, again, that he's going to be able to take his game to yet another level. And we're not sure. Like, you've got plenty of scoring. If you do wind up saying, Tyler's our starter because he's too good, he's Tyler Herro, you're going to get plenty of scoring from everybody else. And then you have 2+ the scores in Dame and Tyler, and then 3 really good defenders in Haywood, Jimmy, and Bam Adebayo. And I think you've got enough of a balance there in playmaking, ability to run the floor, switch ability, etc. It could be a really, really good lineup.
That would be how Bam wins Defensive Player of the Year, going back to yesterday's conversation, right? Because I guess you could say, well, Dame played next to a smaller guard who's a defensive liability his entire career in Portland, and look how that worked out. But then the Heat could say, well, he never was even in a lineup with defenders like Jimmy Butler or Bam Adebayo, not even in that galaxy. Not even close, right? So that would be a lot of stress on Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. But then again, like, the Heat have overcome poor defensive backcourts basically over the last 3 years, right? Yeah. And 4 years, really, 4 years, if you consider, like, going back to Goran Dragic / Kendrick Nunn and Duncan Robinson. So if there's a team that could do it, it's Miami. You're kind of talking me into it. It would remove Kevin Love. You cannot, like, 2 minus defenders versus 3. I mean, in today's NBA and in the spacing and everything, it's exponential, right? So
what's your bench then?
Of overcoming 2 versus 3 bad defenders. What were you saying?
So what's your bench? Caleb, Kevin Love, Christian Wood potentially again. Would he be happy coming to Miami as a bench role too? That's another thing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm not even considering Christian Wood, because that's going to break my brain. I'm doing enough thinking just to kind of have Tyler Herro and Dame on the same team. But no, your bench would be, in that case, I don't mind starting Haywood. I really don't. You start him, whatever. Let's just put him in as a fill-in starter. Yeah. And then it would be Josh Richardson, Caleb Martin, Kevin Love, and then either Thomas Bryant or Orlando Robinson. Josh Richardson just the forgotten guy here. He's a it's a perfect
size
fit
for the rings right now. Yeah, get size for the rings. It's going to happen.
It's a perfect fit, the lineup I gave you first. But then when you consider all sort of the political factors, you might be right where you almost have to start Tyler Herro. And you know what? I really don't hate it, because in today, like, defense does not win championships anymore. If defense won championships, the Heat would have a championship. Defense was never their problem. It's been offense. Offense wins championships these days. And so you could just say, like, all right, Dame, Tyler, two all NBA level defenders, and a solid defender in Highsmith just sort of fill in at that fifth starter position. I'm not against it. I think it could work. And look, I think maybe that's the way you start out, understanding that might not be the way you finish the season. So, hey, Tyler, we're going to give you that starting job. It's your job to keep it,
For 82 games, you got it at least.
And you and I agree on this. We think that Tyler has another level to get to defensively. Like he's not like we don't think he's ever going to be like
he showed improvement last season,
but he could be average. I think as a defender.
Improvement,
he's shown improvement the last couple of years. Yeah,
and I think Josh Richardson would accept the bench role. Like we know that he came to Miami,
no doubt.
with the idea of improving his reputation around the league and a 1 year kind of prove it deal. But I think he would accept it. It's a good blend, man. It is. Both options are really interesting. I'm kind of curious to see how our fans take this because I mean, do you start Tyler? Do you bring Tyler off the bench? It's basically sacrificing one offensive player for a defensive player, one way or the other. Either you start Caleb or Kevin Love, and then you have to have Josh Richardson there for defense in the backcourt. Or if you put Tyler as a starter, then basically bringing Haywood Highsmith as a starter for his defense acumen. And I think he can handle that role. I don't know. I'm kind of leaning more towards the Haywood Highsmith lineup, but both of them are really, really enticing.
Well, we're going to kind of keep peeling this onion back in these hypothetical layers and things like that. What if Damian Lillard that's all we have these days. What if Damian Lillard just doesn't even get traded? We're going to talk about that next year on Locked On Heat. Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Make sure that you're subscribed on YouTube and on your favorite podcast app. Could Damian Lillard change his mind, rescind the trade request? The Miami Herald reported recently that Portland might be holding out hope, that people in that front office could be holding out hope that they could just keep Dame, that Dame would just say, you know what, this has gotten way dirtier, way messier than I thought it could be, way messier than I am comfortable with. Let me just put the toothpaste back in the tube and just come back to Portland and win those hearts and minds all over again. What do you think? Do you think that Dame could potentially change his mind? Do you think that's sort of out there as a risk for Miami?
I do not. I think he will continue to hold out hope. I think he would hold out playing for Portland next season above ever returning there. I really do. I know he'd want to prefer, I think, at least in terms of his preferences, playing for Miami, playing somewhere else, not playing in Portland. Playing in Portland would be dead last, just because, one, we've already seen what that's got. He could retire tomorrow. He's still a Hall of Fame player, an Olympic gold medalist, one of the best players in NBA history. There's nothing else for him to accomplish as an individual. It's the fact that we as fans and media require of him to be a championship level player in order to regard him as an all-time great, even more than we already do regard him as an all-time great, because that's just the standard for today. It's not just being a really great player for a number of years, for over a decade-long career. It's, well, what have you done to win a title? You don't, no rings, right? That's the kind of constant complaint about Dame's career. And for him to win a ring, the team that has the best position to get him and still be able to compete for a title is Miami. So he's not going to play for Portland again. And I hate to say it that way. I know it sounds cold of me. For all the love and all the appreciation, that will never change. He will always be proud and happy with his time in Portland. But he's already done everything he could as a Blazer. It is time for him to move on. And I just think for him to even get to this point and recognize, man, I've already done everything I can as an individual. I've already done everything I can here in this city. It is time for me to move on to at least something different and at least make an attempt. He will never play for the Blazers again.
I think all of that is true. He has admitted the fact that rings culture is starting to affect him and that he does feel like he needs to add a ring to his resume. I think the other part, too, is that he wants to play with teammates his own age. I think that's a big factor that's kind of being overlooked here. It's, hey, everybody you're drafting is like 15 years younger than me. Scoot Henderson is of a different generation. He's like 2 generations difference than Damian Lillard. It's like,
is he 19, right?
Yeah, he's 18, 19, whatever. Dame is 33. Maybe it's one gen. I don't know. Dame's a millennial and Scoot is a Gen Zer, I think. So I think it's one generation difference. But he wants to play with people his own age. Jimmy Butler's his age. Bam Adebayo was like not his age, but 26 is a whole lot closer than
he's
19.
An old soul. He's
an old soul, right? Yeah. So, and they're obviously great friends. And he's elite. He's elite at his position. So, I think that's a big part of it here. For Dame to get to the point of asking for the trade took a lot. This is not James Harden, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, changing teams seemingly every other year because the grass is always greener elsewhere. Damian Lillard went through everything. 11 years in Portland. Never an elite roster. Good rosters. Never an elite roster around him. And then stuck it out after a lottery year because he wanted to give his friend Chauncey Billups a chance at head coach, and then stuck it out one more year. This guy has stuck it out through and through. What Damian Lillard is a lot of things. What he is not is a waffler, right? So for him to suddenly make that trade request, get to that level where he felt compelled to make that trade request, which was clearly so hard for him to do, even though everybody in the media was like, he better get traded. For like 4 years, it's like they should just trade Dame. Dame should ask for a trade. Everybody else is doing it. He never did it. It was really hard for him to get to this point. And now that he has gotten to that point and past that threshold, I just don't see him going back. He's not a waffler. He is somebody who commits to his ideas, commits to what it is that he wants. And I can't see him going back to Portland with his tail between his legs and saying, you know what, never mind, it didn't work out. That said, if he's on the roster, like, he'll play. I think he'll do his job.
I don't think he will.
But I don't think
he will.
Oh, I mean, who knows? I mean, there are people who think that he could just not play. And that could be like that next level for him to maybe force Portland's hand, if just to make it dirty. Hey, I'm not playing. I'm holding out.
Right.
You think that that he could do that?
What are you going to do? Accuse him of being unprofessional? So what? Like, that doesn't matter. Like, are you going to not pay him part of the salary? I'm sure he can kind of hold out for a year and still be okay financially. He's made a lot of money over the course of his career. So it's different. And again, like I don't think his individual reputation is going to take a hit. He's already accomplished. He could retire tomorrow and he's still a surefire Hall of Famer, all-time great player, despite not having won a ring. But I think he'd just like to add one more award, a team award, to his incredible accomplished resume. And so I just don't think there's any benefit of going to camp. He'll miss it. He won't miss it that much. Like, again, this is a roster of basically new young players that he doesn't really even know. Does he want to go there and go through it again? Like, we already know all the history about Dame and organizing off-season team workouts. That's not happening. At least I don't think it is. Like, this is what he does so well. He builds these teams in his image as not the de facto leader, but the absolute leader of each of these groups. Whatever iteration of these groups he's had, he has always led them completely and with all of his heart and soul. But what's he going to do? To your point, he's like, hey, I'm going to call this kid. Can you please put down the Xbox and come play, over the summer? Like, I don't really know you.
I'm not going to do there's the narrative out there is Damian Lillard's a professional. He'll show up wherever he is. Like, Minnesota could trade for him and he'll show up where he is. If he gets traded, I think he'll ultimately just end up playing. But I think that he could hold out.
That's a different thing.
It is that's a completely different thing. Exactly. If he really wants to leave Portland, and like I said, I think he does really want to leave. I think his time is up and he sees it that way. And it would be, quite frankly, kind of embarrassing to go back at this point, right? Like, after all of this, it would be a little embarrassing to go back. And he's a man of pride. And I don't think that that's something that interests him. So, yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe he would hold out just to make it dirty. I mean, Dan Le Batard the other day was saying on his show, Dan Le Batard was like a direct line to Pat Riley, basically, is saying, like, the next step is for Dame to make it dirty. And we've got a couple of months before even training camp starts. And he could hold out for the whole beginning of the season. How long would the Miami Heat be willing to wait?
If he plays, like, what's Portland's incentive for even trading him? It's like, well,
if he plays, he should demand to play 48 minutes a game and never pass the ball to any of the young guys. And he'd be like, look, you can't develop any of the young guys while I'm here.
Like Jimmy Butler's infamous practice, but like on a larger scale and every game, he's going to put up like 70 shots in one game and not pass it at all. I would actually love to see
And Portland's just like, we can't develop Scoot. Dame won't give him the ball.
I mean, I just can't see any way of him getting that point. Like, he's done in Portland. Like, it's the cold reality here. But like, if you're going to come back to Portland and be like, well, I still have a trade request that I'd like to see honored at some point, but what's Portland's incentive to do so? It's like, well, we've got you here and you're playing and you're still doing all the Portland Dame things that we love of you. You know what? Why should we trade you? We were planning on paying you anyway. You might as well just keep you at this point. So no, I think it's the only way. It's not just to play dirty, but to play fairly and be like, look, I don't want to play here anymore because you have not done your job as a front office. I need to be elsewhere. And to our point, like if he gets traded to Minnesota or any team, right? Like that's now I can work with that front office, not Joe Cronin, but this new front office of whatever team I get traded to and say, will you honor my trade request to see if you can work something out with Miami because these jackasses in Portland couldn't get it done.
Who knows whether or not he'll hold out or not, or if he's going to play another game for Portland. I have no idea. Who knows how long this is going to go, but I don't see him changing his mind suddenly and just showing up and be like, you know what, I'm good here. You know what I mean? So,
right.
And I don't see the Heat, by the way, changing their mind and moving on from Damian Lillard either. I don't see that happening. I think that's the guy that they desperately want. It's the guy that Bam wants. It's the guy that Jimmy wants, etc. Going to the poll really quick, 55% of you said that you would rather have Tyler Herro than Jovic or Jaquez. So 55% of you basically said you would trade Jovic and Jaquez and keep Herro. Yeah, closer, honestly, than I thought. But I don't know.
Depth. But the idea of the depth is one that's concerned. But like you're going to lose that depth anyway, plus Tyler, in order to make this trade. Like there's the very realistic possibilities that Jaquez and Jovic are both going to be included in the trade anyway. And you're going to have to lose Tyler in addition to that as a potential pick or whatever.
I don't think that the Heat – I think that the Heat stance is like we're not giving you all of it, right? You either get Tyler Herro and get that whole third team thing involved, or we'll just give you guys that fit positions in need. I don't know. Who knows? It's a lot of hypotheticals here. Maybe we'll see.
It's not going to be Kyle Lowry in a second-round pick, unfortunately. Like they can't lowball him that much.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app. David, thanks for joining me.
You got it, Wes.